of his life when his brothers betrayed him, throwing him into a pit and selling him into slavery. He lost his home, his freedom, and his sense of security. He was falsely accused and imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. But God was not finished. What seemed like wasted years were actually years of preparation. God elevated Joseph to a position of power, restoring him in such a way that he was able to save an entire nation from famine. Genesis 50:20 records Joseph's words to his brothers. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. The pain, the betrayal, the years of suffering, they were not wasted. God was using them to position Joseph for something far greater than he could have imagined. Restoration does not always mean that God gives back exactly what was lost. Sometimes he gives back something different, something greater. Naomi in the book of Ruth lost her husband and both of her sons. She returned to Bethlehem in deep sorrow, believing that her life was over. But God had a plan. Through Ruth, her daughter-in-law, Naomi's life was restored in a way she never expected. Ruth married Boaz, and their child became a source of joy and redemption for Naomi. What she thought was permanent loss was actually the pathway to a greater blessing. God's restoration is not limited to material things. He restores broken hearts, shattered faith, and lost hope. There are people who have lost their passion, who have lost their sense of purpose, who feel as if life has taken too much from them. But God is still in the business of restoration. Joel 2:25 says, I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. God does not just restore things, he restores time. He can redeem the years that seemed wasted, the opportunities that seemed gone, the dreams that seemed dead. He can bring back joy where there was sorrow, peace where there was turmoil, and hope where there was despair. No loss is too great for God to restore. What the enemy has stolen, God can return. What was broken, God can heal. What seemed destroyed, God can rebuild. His restoration is not just about giving back. It is about making things whole again, about showing his power and faithfulness in ways that are beyond human understanding. When God restores, it is always greater than what was lost, always more than what was expected, always a testimony of his unfailing love and grace. Your enemies are in God's hands. There is no betrayal, no attack, no injustice that goes unseen by the Lord. When people rise up against you, when they scheme and plot, when they try to bring harm to your life, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel as though you must fight back in your own strength. But the truth is, you do not have to carry that burden. God is your defender. He sees every word spoken against you, every plan formed in secret, every attempt to harm you, and he will deal with it in his perfect way. The Bible makes it clear that God takes the matter of enemies seriously. Romans 12:19 says, do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. There is no need to seek vengeance, no need to fight battles that belong to God. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who brought down entire armies for his people, is the same God who fights for you today. Look at the story of David. He was anointed to be king, chosen by God, yet he spent years being pursued by Saul, who was consumed with jealousy and rage. Saul tried to kill him, hunted him down, and saw him as an enemy. David had opportunities to strike back, to take matters into his own hands, but he refused. He knew that God was in control. He knew that his enemy was in God's hands. And in the end, it was not David who had to remove Saul. God took care of it. God's justice is perfect, and his timing is always right. Sometimes it seems as though the wicked prosper, as though those who do wrong continue unchecked. But nothing escapes the sight of God. Psalm 37:1. And John says, "Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. No enemy can stand against the justice of God. No oppressor will go unpunished. No one who rises against a child of God will ultimately succeed." Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him for dead. He could have spent his life filled with anger, seeking revenge, but he trusted God. Years later, when he stood before those same brothers, he did not take justice into his own hands. Instead, he said in Genesis 50:20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." God turned the betrayal into a blessing. The very thing that was meant to destroy him was the thing that positioned him for his destiny. Your enemies do not have the final say over your life. The people who try to tear you down, who speak against you, who plot your downfall, they are not in control. God is. And when you put your trust in Him, when you choose to leave your enemies in His hands, you free yourself from the weight of bitterness, from the burden of revenge, from the exhaustion of trying to fight battles that were never yours to fight. Jesus Himself showed us what it means to leave our enemies in God's hands. As He hung on the cross, falsely accused, mocked, beaten, and crucified by the very people He came to save, He did not curse them. He did not call down fire from heaven. Instead, He said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. That is the power of trust. That is the power of knowing that God sees, that God knows, that God will handle everything in His perfect way. God's way of dealing with your enemies is greater than anything you could imagine. He can humble the proud, silence the wicked, expose the deceitful, and bring justice in ways that are beyond human understanding. Sometimes He removes the enemy. Sometimes He changes the enemy's heart. Sometimes He uses the enemy to push you into your destiny. However He chooses to act, one thing is certain: your enemies are in His hands, and He will not fail to deal with them in His perfect way. Through every trial, every betrayal, every moment of suffering, God remains sovereign. He sees the injustice, He knows the pain, and He is never absent from your struggle. The enemies that rise against you, the losses that seem unbearable, the pain that feels unending, none of it is beyond His control. He is your defender, your healer, your restorer. His justice is perfect, His timing is precise, and His plans cannot be stopped. No wound is too deep for Him to heal. No wrong is too great for Him to make right. What was meant to harm you, He can turn for good. What was stolen, He can restore. What was broken, He can redeem. The battles you face are not yours to fight alone. He fights for you. The weight of vengeance, of bitterness, of anger is not yours to carry. He will deal with your enemies. The seasons of pain and loss are not without purpose. He is shaping you, strengthening you, and leading you towards something greater. Trust in His justice. Trust in His restoration. Trust in His power to use every hardship for your growth, even when you cannot see it, even when the pain seems unbearable, even when the wait feels too long. God is at work. His hands are never idle. His justice is never delayed. His love is never failing. And in the end, He will make all things right.